The high-souled Vyasa composed these 100 parvas, of which the above is only an abridgment, having distributed them into 18. The son of Sudha recited them consecutively in the forest of Naimisha as follows. In the Adi Parva are contained Paushya, Pauloma, Astika, Adavansavadara, Samva, the burning of the house of Lak, the slaying of Hidimba, the destruction of the Asura Vaka, Katraratha, the Swayambara of Drupadi, her marriage after the overthrow of rivals in war, the arrival of Vidura, the restoration Arjuna's exile, the abduction of Subhadra, the gift and receipt of the marriage dower, the burning of the Pandava forest, and the meeting with the Asura architect, Maya. The Paushya Parva treats of the greatness of Atunka and the Pauloma of the sons of Bhrigu. The Astika describes the birth of Garuda and of the Nagas, snakes, the churning of the ocean, the incidents relating to the birth of the celestial steed Achakaisrava, and finally, the dynasty of Bharata, as described in the snake sacrifice of King Janamejaya. The Sambhava Parva narrates the birth of various kings and heroes, and that of the sage Krishna Dwapayana, the partial incarnations of deities, the generation of Danavas and Yakshas of great prowess, and serpents, Gandharvas, birds, and of all creatures, and lastly, of the life and adventures of King Bharata, the progenitor of the line that goes by his name, the son born of Sakuntala, in the hermitage of the ascetic Kanwa. This parva also describes the greatness of Bhagirathi and the births of the Vasus in the house of Shantanu and their ascension to heaven. In this parva is also narrated the birth of Bhishma, uniting in himself portions of the energies of the other Vasus, his renunciation of royalty and adoption of the Brahmacharya mode of life, his adherence to his vows, his protection of Chitrangada, and after the death of Chitrangada, his protection of his younger brother, Vichitravirya, and his placing the latter on the throne, the birth of Dharma among men in consequence of the curse of Anamandavya, the births of Dhritarashtra and Pandu through the potency of Vyasa's blessings, and also the birth of the Pandavas, the plottings of Duryodhana to send the sons of Pandu to Varnavata, and the other dark counsels of the sons of Dhritarashtra in regard to the Pandavas. Then the advice administered to Yudhishthira on his way by that well-wisher of the Pandavas, Vidura, in the Mlechka language, the digging of the hole, the burning of Purakana, and the sleeping woman of the fouler caste, with her 5 sons, in the house of Lak, the meeting of the Pandavas in the dreadful forest with Hidimba, and the slaying of her brother Hidimba by Bhima of great prowess, the birth of Gatotkacha, the meeting of the Pandavas with Vyasa, and in accordance with his advice their stay in disguise in the house of a Brahmana in the city of Ekachakra, the destruction of the Asura Vaka, and the amazement of the populace at the sight, the extraordinary births of Krishna and Drishtadyumna, the departure of the Pandavas for Panchala in obedience to the injunction of Vyasa, and moved equally by the desire of winning the hand of Draupadi on learning the tidings of the Swayambara from the lips of a Brahmana, victory of Arjuna over a Gandharv called Angaraparna, on the banks of the Bhagirathi, his contraction of friendship with his adversary, and his hearing from the Gandharv the history of Tapti, Vasishtha, and Orva. This parva treats of the journey of the Pandavas towards Panchala, the acquisition of Draupadi in the midst of all the Rajas, by Arjuna, after having successfully pierced the mark, and in the ensuing fight, the defeat of Salya, Kama, and all the other crown heads at the hands of Bhima and Arjuna of great prowess, the ascertainment by Balrama and Krishna, at the sight of these matchless exploits, that the heroes were the Pandavas, and the arrival of the brothers at the house of the potter where the Pandavas were staying, the dejection of Drupada on learning that Draupadi was to be wedded to 5 husbands, the wonderful story of the 5 Indras related in consequence, the extraordinary and divinely ordained wedding of Draupadi, the sending of Vidura by the sons of Dhritarashtra as envoy to the Pandavas, the arrival of Vidura and his sight to Krishna, the abode of the Pandavas in Kandavaprastha, and then their rule over 1/2 of the kingdom, the fixing of turns by the sons of Pandu, in obedience to the injunction of Narada, for connubial companionship with Krishna. In like manner hath the history of Sunda and Upasunda been recited in this. This Parva, then, treats of the departure of Arjuna for the forest according to the vow, he having seen Draupadi and Yudhishthira sitting together as he entered the chamber to take out arms for delivering the kine of a certain Brahman. This Parva then describes Arjuna's meeting on the way with Ulupi, the daughter of a Naga serpent. It then relates his visits to several sacred spots, the birth of Vabravahana, the deliverance by Arjuna of the 5 celestial damsels who had been turned into alligators by the imprecation of a Brahmana, the meeting of Madhava and Arjuna on the holy spot called Prabhasa, the carrying away of Subhadra by Arjuna, incited thereto by her brother Krishna, in the wonderful car moving on land and water and through mid-air, according to the wish of the rider, the departure for Indraprastha, with the dower, the conception in the womb of Subhadra of that prodigy of prowess, Abhimanyu, Yajnasini's giving birth to children. Then follows the pleasure trip of Krishna and Arjuna to the banks of the Jamuna and the acquisition by them of the discus and the celebrated Baugandiva, the burning of the forest of Pandava, the rescue of Maya by Arjuna and the escape of the serpent, and the begetting of a son by that best of rishis, Mandapala, in the womb of the bird Sarangi. This Parva is divided by Vyasa into 227 chapters. These 227 chapters contain 8,884 shlokas. The second is the extensive Parva called Sava, or the Assembly, full of matter. The subjects of this Parva are the establishment of the grand hall by the Pandavas, their review of their attainers, the description of the Lokapalas by Narada, well acquainted with the celestial regions, the preparations for the Rajasuya sacrifice, the destruction of Jarasandha, the deliverance by Vasudeva of the princes confined in the mountain pass, the campaign of universal conquest by the Pandavas, the arrival of the princes at the Rajasuya sacrifice with tribute, the destruction of Sisupala on the occasion of the sacrifice, in connection with offering of Aragya, Bhimasana's ridicule of Duryodhana in the assembly, Duryodhana's sorrow and envy at the sight of the magnificent scale on which the arrangements had been made, the indignation of Duryodhana in consequence, and the preparations for the game of dice, the defeat of Yudhishthira at play by the wily Sakuni, the deliverance by Dhritarashtra of his afflicted daughter-in-law Draupadi plunged in a sea of distress caused by the gambling, as of a boat tossed about by the tempestuous waves, the endeavors of Duryodhana to engage Yudhishthira again in the game, and the exile of the defeated Yudhishthira with his brothers. These constitute what has been called by the great Vyasa the Sava Parva. This Parva is divided into 7th-8 sections, O best of Brahmanas, of 2,507 shlokas. Then comes the third Parva called Aranyaka, relating to the forest. This Parva treats of the wending of the Pandavas to the forest and the citizens, following the wise Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira's adoration of the god of day, according to the injunctions of Daumya, to be gifted with the power of maintaining the dependent Brahmanas with food and drink, the creation of food through the grace of the sun, the expulsion by Dhritarashtra of Vidura, who always spoke for his master's good, Vidura's coming to the Pandavas and his return to Dhritarashtra at the solicitation of the latter, the wicked Duryodhana's plottings to destroy the forest-ranging Pandavas, being incited thereto by Karna, the appearance of Vyasa, and his dissuasion of Duryodhana bent on going to the forest, the history of Surabhi, the arrival of Maitreya, his laying down to Dhritarashtra the course of action, and his curse on Duryodhana, Bhima's slaying of Kurmara in battle, the coming of the Panchalas, and the princes of the Vrishni race to Yudhishthira on hearing of his defeat at the unfair gambling by Sakuni, Dhananjaya's allaying the wrath of Krishna, Draupadi's lamentations before Madhava, Krishna's cheering her. The fall of Salva also has been here described by the Rishi. Also Krishna's bringing Subhadra with her son to Dvarka, and Drishtadyumna's bringing the son of Draupadi to Panchala, the entrance of the sons of Pandu into the romantic Dwaita wood, conversation of Bhima, Yudhishthira, and Draupadi, the coming of Vyasa to the Pandavas and his endowing Yudhishthira with the power of Pratismriti, then, after the departure of Vyasa, the removal of the Pandavas to the forest of Kamayaka, the wanderings of Arjuna of immeasurable prowess in search of weapons, his battle with Mahadeva in the guise of a hunter, his meeting with the Lokapalas and receipt of weapons from them, his journey to the regions of Indra for arms, and the consequent anxiety of Dhritarashtra, the wailings and lamentations of Yudhishthira on the occasion of his meeting with the worshipful great sage Brihadaswa. Here occurs the holy and highly pathetic story of Nala illustrating the patience of the Mayanthi and the character of Nala. Then the acquirement by Yudhishthira of the mysteries of dice from the same great sage, then the arrival of the Rishi Lomesa from the heavens to where the Pandavas were, and the receipt by these high-souled dwellers in the woods of the intelligence brought by the Rishi of their brother Arjuna staving in the heavens, then the pilgrimage of the Pandavas to various sacred spots in accordance with the message of Arjuna, and their attainment of great merit and virtue consequent on such pilgrimage, then the pilgrimage of the great sage Narada to the shrine Pitasta, also the pilgrimage of the high-souled Pandavas. Here is the deprivation of Karna of his earrings by Indra. Here also is recited the sacrificial magnificence of Gaia, then the story of Agastya, in which the Rishi ate up the Azura Vatapi, and his connubial connection with Lopamudra from the desire of offspring. Then the story of Rishyasringa, who adopted Brahmacharya mode of life from his very boyhood. Then the history of Rama of great prowess, the son of Jamadagni, in which has been narrated the death of Kartavirya and the Haihayas. Then the meeting between the Pandavas and the Vrishnis in the sacred spot called Prabhasa. Then the story of Sukanya, in which Chayavana, the son of Bhrigu, made the twins, Ashvinis, drink at the sacrifice of King Saryati, the Soma juice, from which they had been excluded by the other gods, and in which besides is shown how Chayavana himself acquired perpetual youth as a boon from the grateful Ashvinis. Then hath been described the history of King Mandhata, then the history of Prince Jantu, and how King Somaka by offering up his only son, Jantu, in sacrifice obtained 100 others, then the excellent history of the hawk and the pigeon, then the examination of King Sivi by Indra, Agni, and Dharma, then the story of Ashtavakra, in which occurs the disputation at the sacrifice of Janaka between that Rishi and the first of logicians, Vandi, the son of Varuna, the defeat of Vandi by the great Ashtavakra, and the release by the Rishi of his father from the depths of the ocean. Then the story of Yavakrita, and then that of the great Ravya, then the departure of the Pandavas for Gandhamadana and their abode in the asylum called Narayana. Then Bhimasina's journey to Gandhamadana at the request of Draupadi, in search of the sweet-scented flower. Bhima's meeting on his way, in a grove of bananas with Hanuman, the son of Pavna of great prowess, Bhima's bath in the tank and the destruction of the flowers therein for obtaining the sweet-scented flower he was in search of, his consequent battle with the mighty Rakshasas and the Yakshas of great prowess including Hanuman, the destruction of the Azura Jata by Bhima, the meeting of the Pandavas with the royal sage Bhishma Parva, their departure for the asylum of Arshtashina and abode therein, the incitement of Bhima to acts of vengeance by Draupadi. Then is narrated the ascent on the hills of Kailasa by Bhimasena, his terrific battle with the mighty Yakshas headed by Hanuman, then the meeting of the Pandavas with Vaisravana, Kuvara, and the meeting with Arjuna after he had obtained for the purpose of Yudhishthira many celestial weapons, then Arjuna's terrible encounter with the Nivedakavachas dwelling in Hiranyaparva, and also with the Paulomas and the Kalakiyas, their destruction at the hands of Arjuna, the commencement of the display of the celestial weapons by Arjuna before Yudhishthira, the prevention of the same by Narada, the descent of the Pandavas from Gandhamadana, the seizure of Bhima in the forest by a mighty serpent huge as the mountain, his release from the coils of the snake, upon Yudhishthira's answering certain questions, the return of the Pandavas to the Kamayaka woods. Here is described the reappearance of Vasudeva to see the mighty sons of Pandu, the arrival of Markandeya, and various recitals, the history of Prithu the son of Vina recited by the great Rishi, the stories of Sarasvati, and the Rishi Tarkya. After these is the story of Matsya, other old stories recited by Markandeya, the stories of Indradyumna and Dundhumara, then the history of the chaste wife, the history of Anjira, the meeting and conversation of Drupadi and Satyabhama, the return of the Pandavas to the forest of Dwaita, then the procession to see the calves and the captivity of Duryodhana, and when the wretch was being carried off, his rescue by Arjuna. Here is Yudhishthira's dream of the deer, then the re-entry of the Pandavas into the Kamayaka forest. Here also is the long story of Vrihadranika. Here also is recited the story of Durvasa, then the abduction by Jayadratha of Drupadi from the asylum, the pursuit of the ravisher by Bhima swift as the air, and the ill-shaving of Jayadratha's crown at Bhima's hand. Here is the long history of Rama, in which is shown how Rama by his prowess slew Ravana in battle. Here also is narrated the story of Savitri. Then Karna's deprivation by Indra of his earrings, then the presentation to Karna by the gratified Indra of a Sakti missile weapon, which had the virtue of killing only one person against whom it might be hurled, then the story called Aranya, in which Dharma, the god of justice, gave advice to his son, Yudhishthira, in which, besides, is recited how the Pandavas after having obtained a boon went towards the west. These are all included in the third parva called Aranyaka, consisting of 269 sections. The number of shlokas is 11,664.